Hello, everyone. I'm starting to see people come in. We'll wait a couple more minutes for a couple more folks to drop in and join us before we start talking about marketing strategies. But if you have any questions or want me to know anything about yourself, you can drop it in the Q&A, and I'll try to leave time at the end to answer any questions. And we'll get started in just a few minutes, maybe like one or two. And I'm a Midwesterner. I am from Indiana. That's where I live. And I can make best friends with anyone. So I'm just going to ramble and talk while we wait for people so it's not awkward silence. I always hate when I go to webinars and you're just sitting there and no one's saying anything. So I'm really excited to chat about this, some background about me while we wait. That's not the meat of it. I am a marketing lead here at Collective, but actually beyond this, my full-time job, I help my parents with a dinner theater with their marketing strategy. I had someone joke with me that I am from a Hallmark town. Totally honestly, don't necessarily disagree. A town of 500 people, my parents saved a failing business. It's a whole thing. So if you want to ask a question about that, you're more than welcome to as well. I'll give it another minute before we get started. So get situated, make sure you can hear me. If anybody's having audio issues, just let me know. I'm also joined by Sarah, who is under the Collective name, who's available to you as well. We're here to support you with any questions you may have. All right, so it looks like we're hitting critical mass here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you joined in the last kind of batch of people that hopped in, my name is Meredith. I'm a marketing lead here at Collective, and I'm really excited to talk about email marketing strategies for small businesses today. I joined Collective specifically because I love supporting small businesses. I spent a really good chunk of my career at Mindbody, which is a software that supports small fitness studios around the world, really. And I got to grow with them, build a customer marketing program there. Had a couple of places in between, but now I'm really excited to be back supporting small businesses. On the side, I do help marketing strategy for small businesses as they get set up, usually pro bono, just because I love it's something that brings me joy. I've helped with internet service providers, my parents' dinner theater, like I alluded to earlier, craft businesses, podcasts, pretty much anything you can think of, I've probably helped in some way or form. My favorite one was probably a jewelry store. You wouldn't expect them to have very niche marketing things, and needs, but they do. So I'll pull some of those experiences in as we discuss things today. But we have a pretty big agenda, so I'm going to keep us going. The first thing, we're just going to go through our agenda. Obviously, we've got that up, but we're going to talk about email marketing fundamentals, marketing content strategy. We'll talk about automation. I really love automation. I will wax poetic about it. I'm an early adopter on all tech things. But then we're going to tie that into why does this matter for taxes? Collective is a tax and bookkeeping services company. So you may be wondering, why are we talking about marketing? I'll tie it together, pinky promise. And then we'll talk about something called an S Corp and why it may be an option for you if you're looking for opportunities to save money on your taxes. But before we get too much further, I do want to pull out a disclaimer that this webinar is for educational purposes only, so it's not construed as legal or tax advice. I'm not a lawyer. I do not play it on TV, nor am I a CPA or enrolled agent. But I am happy to talk about marketing till the cows come home, so they let me have this webinar with you today. So just know if you have anything that you want to talk to a professional about, make sure you do that before you take any of the things we talk about today. So I'll start with email marketing. That is what I do mostly at Collective. So emails you get, my team works on them. Same thing with the SMS most of you got. That is actually me. So if you reply back, you will get me. So for the few of you that did reply back, that was actually me you were talking to, not a robot, not someone else on our team. We'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about tools in a second, but email marketing offers kind of those same abilities to go from one person in your small business to a lot of people. Think of it like a megaphone if used correctly, or it could be kind of that annoying loud pitch noise if you don't do it correctly. So some things to consider when you're building an email marketing program. I look at the 4 buckets. So first, we got to think about what content do we want to send out to the world. Then we want to think about how frequently do we do this. And then personalization, which is something that you'll see a lot and you may not even realize how much is being personalized to you. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second, but you're only as good as the data that you have. And it's worse to try to personalize something when you're not entirely sure if you can trust the data that you've got. And I'll give you some examples when we get there. And the last one is list management. Email marketing is not something that you can just turn on and forget. There are some legal complexities and laws that govern email marketing that you just need to think about as you build out an email marketing strategy. So we'll talk about content first, kind of thinking about it as a content plan. We'll talk about content marketing in a second, but we're talking specifically about email content here. First thing, you have to know your audience. So when you think about who am I talking to and what do they need, think about who will be receiving your emails. So one example, and I can give you a collective specific example, we work with small businesses all around the United States. And we have found that we have a pretty good open rate and engagement rate on Friday evenings. I've worked in previous companies where you would never send an email on a Friday afternoon or evening. And you think about it, it's because the people that you're sending an email to, they are going to be working on that Friday afternoon. They may be coming back to work later. They may work on the weekends. And so you need to dive into the question of who. So if you're sending, let's say, to somebody who's a professional and you want them to book a salon service, they may be thinking about it about 7 p.m. at night or when they're brushing their teeth and they see, oh, I've got my gray roots coming in, I may need to book a color appointment. So think about who's receiving it and then think about what do they need and what time do they need it. So that's the second piece. When do you check your inboxes? So going back with that salon example, if you can think the person that you're targeting is going to be someone that's going to think about, I need this service at the time they go to bed. And then I don't know about y'all, but I know I have a really bad habit of scrolling through email every night before bed. I try to kick it. I've got apps that are trying to make me stop, but I still do it. So maybe think, do you try to target an email at that point in time so they book it? They take action before they go to bed and think, I did one more thing before I went to sleep that night. So that's where knowing your audience comes in. But by contrast, if you are somebody that works on something and own a business that isn't going to be well received by sending an email at that time of night, say you know that your target audience, you don't want them. Your ideal person isn't going to be someone that's up that late. Or they may be, if you're geographic specific or like a restaurant, it may not make sense because you're closed. So those all go into when do you want to send the email as well as who's getting it on the other end. Then this is when you don't necessarily think about all that much. We live in a very mobile world where a lot of us check our emails on our phone, but you need to think about where are people going to read the emails that you send. And the reason that this is important is because there are aspects of email that don't translate well on phones. And there are things that don't translate well on desktop. So if you have a business that you have a website that is fine on both, you're fine on both. But if you have a mobile app, it may not make sense to send an email if you have people that aren't going to be able to access your result or that takes 2 or 3 steps. So really good example you'll see with a lot of companies that have apps. So the Apple Store or the App Store on Apple requires about 30% of any payments processed on their platform. So if you look at something like Ring, my husband and I just bought an additional couple security cameras, and so now we're getting all of the emails about subscribing. You can't actually purchase that subscription on your phone. You have to go to a desktop computer. So when you're thinking about your email strategy, you're also thinking about how do I plan for if there's a blocker to someone completing the action I want them to do if they're on their phone or their desktop. For some of you, it may not matter, but for some, it may be something that you have to do alternate links. You may need to find a developer who can help with some more in-depth coding. There's lots of different bits that go into that. So when you're building your content plan, that's something else to think through. Then plan in advance. I went to a podcast conference a couple years ago, and there's a stat that on average, new podcasts stop after 7 episodes. And the reason why is because you don't plan in advance. So they recommend you have 10 podcast episodes before you ever start. That way you get over that hump and you have enough time to plan. It's the same thing with email. If you're thinking one email ahead, it's going to be really hard to stay in front of it. So if something happens in life, you're going to kind of get off the wagon. You're not going to know how can I catch back up to the work that I've been doing. And so you have to think through what are those next steps. My general rule of thumb is a week at a time. At Collective, we send quite a few emails. For businesses I've had where there haven't been as many communications going out, I've done as far as 6 weeks in advance. Really, this is something that you would think about for your own business because it's going to depend on what you need. So rule of thumb, think about a month in advance. This becomes really important if you're planning on taking vacation during the holiday season when you want to potentially do discount codes or special offers for Thanksgiving, Black Friday, any of the holidays in December. Having a plan in advance is going to make it easier for you to execute. And that opens the door as well for you to potentially hire a contractor or if someone you find on Fiverr or Upwork to do that work for you if you have a long-term plan. It's going to be a little more tough to get a freelancer willing to do an email by email without an overall strategy because I can speak from experience. We love knowing how the broad strokes of what we're working on comes together. So I'd recommend a month. Your mileage may vary. You may decide, I only need to do a couple weeks at a time. If you're heavily consumer, your turnover rate's pretty fast. Or you could also do longer if you have a longer sales cycle. It takes longer to nurture people, depending upon how long your campaigns might be. Another piece of this is having a cohesive messaging strategy. So the big thing you have to think here is making sure that your messages all link together. So if I send an email to you today, and then I send you one in 2 weeks and the messages don't align, you're going to get confused. It's going to diminish trust. You're not sure what you really should be believing. A good example is actually one that I got from a pineapple grower that the subject line said something different and referenced an old email versus their one for Mother's Day. And the discount code was wrong. So they accidentally sent something that overlapped with what they sent for Easter. I honestly, it took me a minute to figure out what was going on. And that cognitive dissonance is enough to make you think, I'm not sure if I trust you. Granted, I love these pineapples. It's not going to diminish my brand loyalty, but also made me hesitant to purchase. So make sure you're thinking about that as you're building out a strategy, checking those boxes, making sure everything builds on each other, and you're not contradicting yourself 3 or 4 emails down. Then this is a new one. This is something that's really throwing marketing a loop right now. I'll be totally honest. If you have Gmail or you have use Apple Mail on your phone, you may have noticed that AI tools are summarizing your email for you. It's super cool, helps you move fast. As a consumer, I love it because I don't have to read all of the emails. The problem when you're the person sending the emails is making sure that you know how AI is going to summarize what you say. So, what I recommend to people is take your email after you write it, drop it into Gemini, especially if you know lots of people that you're sending an email to use Gmail, and ask Gemini to summarize it like it would if it was in a Gmail inbox. It will be very, very close to what will actually come through, and you can check at that point, did all of my messages get conveyed? Did it miss something? And if it did, then you can ask Gemini, hey, I actually wanted this part included. How should I adjust my email to ensure that? And it will give you a recommendation. This is definitely an area of working smarter, not harder. Use the robots to help you. And this is only going to become more and more pertinent over the coming years and really months because more people are going to be using AI tools to help them with tasks that they have on their list, and email is just one of them. So make sure you're doing that. Gemini, there's a certain amount of uses you get for free per month. So depending upon how many emails you're sending, you probably don't even have to pay for this service. So let Gemini especially help you. The reason I'm saying Gemini, to be clear, is because Gemini is the same AI that's going to summarize for your inbox. If you know most people are using Apple Mail, then you would do that same thing, but do it with ChatGPT because Apple partnered with ChatGPT for their AI sourcing. So those are the two that you can use. Again, knowing your audience and how they check their email and where they check their email will help you decide, or you can do both and double dip if you'd like. Then we want to know our goals. What are we trying to accomplish with email? So first, what action do you want people to take? If you are a business who sells things, you probably want them to buy. It's pretty clear cut. If you're a service, you may want them to book. But there's also emails that are just there to be informational, to keep yourself top of mind. So think newsletters, think we just did this thing, this is an update from us. You'll get those in your email all the time. And what's nice about those is if you look at your inbox as a place people ask you for money, this will change your world, I promise. If you look at every email you get and think, everyone in my inbox is asking me for something. Who's asking me for money? Who's asking me for time? And who's asking me to just pay attention to them? You start looking at those emails a little differently. And so if you're someone that can provide information and you do that in exchange for no extra cost, no money down, you'll start seeing some brand loyalty accumulate. So if you're someone that's interested in a newsletter or a regular email cadence, That's really where that comes in, because then you're looking at what can I give you for free to keep you engaged, but also not do it in a way that seems annoying or disingenuous. So knowing what action you want to take per email will help. It also helps you design the email, what's your call to action, how long is it going to be? Then, once you know that, ask yourself, where do you want them to go? So, if we take that newsletter example, a lot of times there are no links in newsletters, like a CTA, like a big button that tells you to go do something. It's just going to be links to other content versus something if you're like, this is something that we're discounting, you're going to deep link into wherever you sell, whether that's a store, online, or a booking platform if you're a restaurant or a hairstylist or whatever that might be. You're going to link there. So when you are designing an email, you want to know, where am I going to send you? What's the end result of where we're going? And that's going to help kind of be your map for designing the rest of your email and the rest of your strategy. And then lastly, the last, probably most important, but least sexy part of email marketing is knowing the rules. So there are certain types of emails that need disclaimers. So in the beginning of this, you saw we had a disclaimer. There's a couple of reasons why you need to do this, but for email purposes, what you're doing is trying to make sure that you are conveying everything you legally need to. For most businesses, this is going to be if you are an affiliate and you get revenue back from someone if they click on a link and purchase something, you're going to want to have a disclaimer. So if you're have an affiliate link for Amazon, if you're an influencer who partners with lots of different brands, you're going to want that disclaimer front and center. The FTC is very strict about this. I actually started my career as a marketer as a social media marketer for a company as they went public, and the rules are very strict, and they've become only stricter to make sure that there's transparency. So err on the side of caution here. You can put it on the email. You can do a star and asterisk as long as it's very clear, it's not hidden. You can argue if anything comes up that you did your best and acted in the best interest of your customers. Then there are commercial emails and transactional emails. Commercial require canned spam. So if you look in your inbox and you'll see emails, you can tell which ones are which. So commercial email is one that is sent one-to-many. There's not something that is directly related to your relationship with a company that already exists. There's always going to be a couple of things in that footer. There's going to be an unsubscribe, which is a requirement, as well as an address and the information about the company who sent it. If those aren't there, they're not in compliance with CAN spam. On the flip side, there is transactional emails. So those are ones that you send to confirm services, to confirm the booking is there, receipts for purchases, things like that. They don't have to have that. Depending upon where you're located, I don't know if we have people on here who are not in the US. It gets more strict as soon as you start sending to citizens who are not US citizens. So in the UK, we'll just briefly go over these just in case. You do have to have something where you can't have marketing content in your transactional emails. In the US, we have a little more wiggle room, so you could put in articles. If you look at some emails that you have, you might see them for US, and so that's what email marketers are doing. In the US, we can. In the UK and the EU, you cannot. So just something to keep in mind if you do work with people who have international citizenships. I know GDPR, it applies to citizens regardless of where they live. So it's just something to keep in mind as you build out your strategy. To dive in a little bit more in email frequency, how much is too much? There are a lot of different ways to measure this, and it's going to be different for every single business. There are businesses who can send you multiple emails a day and you're totally fine with it because you love what they send. And there are places where you get an email like, oh, I thought I unsubscribed. I don't want this anymore. So when you're asking yourself, how do I know how much is too much? Two things you can ask yourself. One, look at behavior. Your customers, the people who are getting your emails, will tell you exactly without actually telling you if they like it or they don't. So you can look at how many people are opening my email. If you start to see that dropping, you're probably sending a little too much. It may actually be too few on the open rate, so your mileage may vary there, but that's going to be a first kind of canary in the coal mine. Where you're really going to find the saturation sweet spot is going to be if you see a peak in unsubscribes. So an unsubscribe, all email platforms are going to tell you this. This is where that link I mentioned where you have to have the unsubscribe rules. If you have that, it will track in your email service provider and it will tell you the percentage of people that have unsubscribed. We track this on our emails here. It's something I obsess over just to make sure we're in a healthy range. And on average, for most people, it's going to be between 0.4% and 0.6%. If you go to 1% or higher, you are irritating the people you're sending emails to in one way, shape, or form. It could be too much. It could be poor content. It could be they try to unsubscribe and maybe you move tools and you didn't know. So when you start a program, expect it to be higher, but about 6 to 8 weeks in, you should see it level out at lower than 0.6%. If you don't, then it's time to reevaluate. Are you sending too much? And you may reach out to people who've unsubscribed and say, I'd like to talk with you. What can I do? What can I improve? And you might be able to get that information. But on the other side, if you're like, you know what, this is very, more qualitative, not quantitative. I am a numbers person. I want to know how this would work. AI can help you with this. So earlier I talked about Gemini, how it can help you with summaries for your emails. You can also use it to help you figure out who's had too many messages. HubSpot does this, MailChimp does this, Enterprise Tool do this now, where they're actually going to analyze the behavior of the people you're sending emails to and predict who's close to unsubscribing just on the volume of emails they've gotten. So you can click a little switch and say, don't send to this audience. HubSpot did this, I think 3 or 4 years ago, where it's like, do not send to a disengaged list. And now it's even beyond that of even if they are engaged, you avoid saturation. So AI can help you here. It also can help you identify people that may just need less touches. They still want to hear from you, and they might not have it in their preferences. Like, I only want to hear from you for a month, every month. But AI can help you identify that. So there are tools that you can have them analyze. You could use Claude for this. Claude can parse CSVs, so you can export your history of the behavior. I would recommend removing any email addresses from it. Just keep it to their IDs that are unique in your system and say, here's my email addresses. Identify, the frequency or the average amount of times people click or how long afterwards, how many times should I send emails? And again, AI can help you with that. It's not going to necessarily know your audience, but it can take that data and synthesize it to help you make educated decisions on long-term plans and strategy. All right, personalization. I love personalization. It is definitely something that can have a lot of value when you use it correctly. But if you don't use it correctly, it ends up being far, far worse than it could have been if you never tried. So, number one rule of personalization, only personalize what you can trust. If you don't trust your data, if you don't know the 100% that you feel confident that it is accurate, then don't use it. Great example actually happened to my husband and I. We have an electric car, and we got an email encouraging us to buy a battery for our house so we can avoid power outages in Mobile, Alabama. And if you were here for the first minute or two, and I was kind of just spitballing so people weren't sitting in silence, I live in Indiana. I don't live in Alabama. They know this. They hold our car loan. They should have done their research. Really, really bad personalization, diminished trust tremendously in that regard. So if you don't trust it, don't use it. The biggest places where it tends to happen more frequently, though, is with names. So if you have a place where you're collecting names and the person didn't input it themselves, it's probably best practice not to use that name. So if you're catching it from like their email and supposing like a Catherine is a Kate or a Katie, it really isn't worth it. You can build an email so it puts out like, hi there. If you don't have someone's name or you don't have concrete data, you can do things like that. But make sure that you're only doing what you can trust. If that's one thing you take from this webinar, I will stand on the soapbox. I could give you a 45-minute TED Talk just about that. But also personalize where it matters. So personalization really shines when you use it in open rates. But that only works if you use it in the subject line or the pre-header, depending upon what email you're using. So if you're trying to send an email and you want to personalize it and you say, hi, Meredith, in the email, I may not even see that. Versus if you put the subject line of top picks for Meredith's dog or whatever it might be. I also love Chewy for the personalization they do. Is another really good example that you can emulate. They're a pet company and they know the names of my dogs, know the ages of my dogs. And so they will send things to my dogs via my email. And it's always really funny because they have their data that clean, they can do it. So on the email marketer, I'm like, this is super cool. But then as a human, I'm like, this is just really, really good marketing because you're showing how well you know me. And then the last one, know your customer. So this is kind of the same thing I was just referencing of it's worthless if you send the wrong email or make incorrect assumptions. So if you're going to use personalization, know it can provide benefits, but the drawbacks and the risks are pretty high if you don't 100% commit, know what you're doing, and know that you can trust the information you're trying to give. All right, list management. I promise we're almost through the email marketing. We'll get to content in a second. List management, make sure that you are thinking about if I do this and I invest in emails, I am taking care of my lists. And you might be like, well, aren't email providers going to do that for me? Yes and no. So, talk about HubSpot here. I've used HubSpot for many, many different brands, and it helps with the opt in unsubscribe process. So, you can capture people with forms, they come into your database, you can work them as leads, you can send them emails, they gather consent. That one's taken care of. However, if you're like going to a trade show or you are work at a farmer's market booth and you collect emails that way, make sure that you have some sort of thing on that list of by putting down your email, you opt in to let me send you emails. Again, it's kind of a CYA to make sure you have that clear opt-in, but it protects you in case somebody does issue a complaint. The second thing is you want to maintain your list. So for most email providers, you pay per contact. So if you've got a really big list, you're paying for that. And so if you've got people who have not engaged with your emails in years, you can switch them to an archived contact. So you don't pay for them, but they're still in your CRM. So if you're using HubSpot, that's a really great way to help balance. I want the historical data, but I don't need to keep everyone there. And it helps reduce your costs. It also helps with your percentage. So if you're looking at, I want to look at how do I improve my open rates, my engagement rates, look at the people who you can engage with closely, and not the people who are just there. If they haven't opened an email for you like 6 months, it's probably not worth keeping to email them. They'll come back if they're ready. There's ways you can capture intent with other channels and start warming them up again, but that's going to help again save some money with your CRM costs. And the last one is some email service providers do it themselves, but if someone's email bounces back, you don't want them in your database. Go ahead and take them out. And like I had somebody on a board I work on say, bless and let go. So just bless and let go. Say, your email is wrong. I don't know what happened. And sometimes it can be their email inbox gets full. Believe it or not, it can happen. And sometimes it's, they have a domain, they gave up the domain, the email breaks, or they change jobs. So they'll come back to you if they want to, but you don't have to chase them down. Don't be heartbroken about the people you have to remove because their emails are bouncing. All right, content marketing strategy. So this, again, we could do many, many webinars about content marketing, about how you can use it for small business. So this is a very, very high level. I know I have a question in the Q&A. I'll answer more at the end. So if you've got questions for email marketing, go ahead and toss them in. Same thing for content marketing as we go through it. But content marketing for small business, it's going to seem kind of similar for email. There's a couple more things that we need to consider. So the first one is, how do you build a content plan around what's called an ideal client persona? And so there are lots of tools that exist to help you identify who your ideal client is. One that I love is from Strategizer, Stragyzer. It's a free tool. It's a whole bunch of strategy tools, but there's one that's kind of like a circle with a square next to it. And essentially it helps you map out, here are the pain points someone is trying to solve. Here's how I want them to feel when they interact with my business. And you're essentially from there able to figure out, this is the type of content that will help them with this pain. So it's basically kind of a cheat code to build a content strategy. And there are tons of resources like that. So if you even just search for ICP worksheet or key persona worksheet, I've heard people call them avatars. When you start building that, it's going to give you the information you need to really dive into who your customer is and what places are they going to show up, which then helps you do part two, which is deciding how much time, effort, and money you want to invest. Content can be a black hole of revenue if you let it. It's very easy to focus on, I want likes, I want engagement, rather than concrete business results. And I felt absolutely to this. When I started my career, I got put in charge of Facebook ads. And I own social media. So I was like, I'm going to prioritize this for likes and engagement, of course. And 3 weeks later, I got a very strongly worded meeting with our head of marketing saying, we're not getting leads. What happened? And I was like, well, you didn't tell me to prioritize for leads. And so again, you're going to set your goals and determine your effort and how much time you're going to invest in it. So depending on what channel you're using, where are you using a production company to help you? Are you doing it yourself? Are you doing social content? Are you doing traditional written content? Do you need a freelancer? You're going to need to go into it knowing this is the amount of money I can invest, or this is how much time I can invest. Then the last place is setting smart goals. Like I said earlier, social media and content can be something that can just absorb a lot of your time and effort. So if you set these goals ahead of time and you're like, all right, I want these results, then you can go forward and know that you're committed to performance. And you can also determine this isn't working and send your time and money elsewhere. Small businesses, your time is a resource, your money is a resource, and you can make sure with those goals that you're hitting the right areas. So I mentioned the ideal client persona. Here is the things that are included in that. And I thought I included on my slide notes the link to the strategizer. I did. So I am going to go ahead and once we get to Q&A, I will share that with everyone so you can grab it and grab the tool I mentioned to build out your ICP. That includes demographic information. How old are they? Where do they live? Do they live in the city, the country? For some of you, it's going to be very clear, that information. For some of you, it could be a nationwide audience, or it could be if you do B2B services, it could be really, really big. But then you dial it in a little bit more in terms of behavior. What do they do? Where do they spend money? Where do they go? On a Saturday morning, are they working out? Are they going to the coffee shop? Are they sleeping in? Who are these people? What do they do? And then it goes into lifestyle. Are they married? Do they have kids? What kind of car do they drive? You can get really granular. People will actually name their personas. I've worked at companies that it's a fun exercise where you do a contest to name people. And I've also worked at ones that has one avatar, one client profile, and they're like, this is Tim. I do everything in service of Tim. And then the last piece is, what problems do you want to solve for them? So let's say our person's name is Tim. We know everything about him. Then we're like, how can we help Tim solve a problem today? How can my business help them do that? And then once you have that in your brain, you have that documented, you can start building out content with that person in mind. And you'll be surprised at how easy that gets when it feels like it's a real person that you know. And for some of you, you could either be your target persona or know someone who is. And so you can visualize what the world is like for them, and which makes this a lot easier. So investment considerations, there's a lot of things you can consider. So how much time can you commit? Social media channels require so much more upkeep than other channels do because you need to have posting frequency. If you stop posting for a while, everything you've built you can lose. We all are servants to the algorithms these days. So just make sure that you are committing that time. Again, it goes to what we talked about earlier of how much do you want to build up in the pipeline before you start, which then goes to how frequently. Are you a daily poster? Are you multiple times a day? Are you once a week? It's going to depend on channels. TikTok moves faster than LinkedIn, for example. So if you're B2B and you're like, I can do once a week on LinkedIn, that's great. If you want to hop on TikTok trends, it's going to be a lot more frequent to keep up with that. Again, your mileage may vary. You're going to determine that for your business. But you do want to plan in advance regardless. So you need to plan the content ahead of time. Even if you're being reactive to trends, having an idea of evergreen content in case there's not something you want to jump on will help you keep things level in between moments where you're like, this is a moment my brain can shine, I can hop in here. The one advice I'll give you is don't intend and try to go viral. Try to create content that's going to drive value. So think about your customer persona. What do they want to see? And that may lead to you going viral. And I'll give you a really good example of this. There's a pizza place here in Indianapolis. If you're on TikTok or Instagram, you may have seen this video of them opening up on a day they were closed to make a pizza for a dog on its last day. And it went viral. I know it had like 16,000 likes on Instagram. I don't know what the number is on TikTok at this point. But this is a small place. They're open 4 days a week. And I drive by it all the time. And so seeing them had that set level of success because they did something that was authentic to their customer, that's what drives virality. It's not just I'm going to use the audio or I'm going to use hashtags that other people are using. So plan in advance, but also think through for when moments happen, how are you going to execute? Have a strategy, have a plan. And then knowing your goals. Again, it goes back to our SMART goals list. Do you want to get new customers, or are you trying to attract your current ones to engage with you? What's your purpose? For different companies and different businesses, it's different. So if you're someone that's like, I want to get my people that are already here and really focus on them, that's one thing. You could have a private account for that. I know several brands do that. Or you can go the other side, which is I want to have people find me. There's lots of opportunity for both those things, but they're very different pieces of content. And then now it's time to develop your strategy. So what type of content do you create? We've talked about this throughout. What channels do you want to focus on? Your ideal customer persona is going to help drive that, because if you're someone that your person is going to be on TikTok, you're going to spend a lot of time there. But if you're a person that they read long blogs, spend time on Medium, they appreciate thought leadership, you might be better served spending time on traditional content marketing. And then the last and most important fun thing is you get to determine your voice. Who are you as a brand? What do you stand for? Are you snarky? Are you matter of fact? Are you someone that sounds like you're talking to a best friend? You get to choose that. You are your brand. You are your business. You get to pick what you sound like. And then automation that works. So now you've got all these things. How do you actually make it do it? And that's where automation comes in. So 3 things to consider. First, you want to buy tools that you can batch work when you have free time. So scheduling tools, Sprout Social, email marketing tools where you can build things in advance and schedule them later are going to be your best friend. AI can also help you with first drafts, so you don't have to create it all yourself. You have opportunities to leverage machine learning to help you do those. Again, any of the options are going to be really great for first draft. But when you get to the end, there's lots of AIs to choose from. One that most of you probably already use is Grammarly. Grammarly is AI powered. So have Grammarly check for typos. You can use AI in your email service provider to find best time to send. Same thing with social media for posting. Automation, trust it, love it. Again, this could be its own separate topic. I will talk about automation till the cows come home. I love automating. Kind of when you think about the Eisenhower matrix, when it is important but not urgent is where automation shines. So it's something that has to happen, but it doesn't have to be done by you in the moment. You can find tools to help you. One of my favorite ones I'm using right now is actually within my iPhone itself. You can schedule SMS messages to go out when you want. So if you're like me and I work out in the mornings, I think about people when I'm driving to or from the gym. I'm like, oh, it's like 6 a.m. I don't want to text them right now. I just schedule the text for later in the day. It handles it. I don't have to worry about it. That's automation. There's tons of things in your daily life you may not even realize are automation that you can apply to marketing strategies and help you succeed. All right, bring it home to talk about why is Collective talking about marketing strategies besides the fact that I bugged our growth team to let me do this webinar. So the reason why is because a lot of the things we're talking about, the tools, the techniques, the costs, may be able to be deducted from your tax bill. True story, 100% honest. Here are some that you might want to think about. So if you pay for ads on social media channels, you may be able to deduct it. If you're purchasing swag for the normal course of your business, like you booth at farmers markets and you have stickers that you give out, or you have t-shirts, swag, you're doing a contest, that could be deductible. Marketing tools, your email marketing tool, your tool that you're using to do schedule posts, all the automation stuff we just talked about, it may be deductible. Your website expenses, where you're hosting, if you hire a contractor to help you design your website and build it, again, could be deductible. The common thread, and why I say maybe deductible, is because there are other underlying aspects of it. They need to be qualified, they need to be within the normal scope of business, but also you have to track it. You have to be doing it in your bookkeeping and your accounting, tracking what did you purchase, what was the purpose of the purchase, and the date. Like basic stuff that can be hard. You might, especially when you think about like a software tool, you might have a monthly subscription and just let it run a credit card. If you're not tracking that, it can be difficult. So this is something that my husband and I, we help my father-in-law with his business. And this is something we're always championing with him of, we understand you want to have these things on your personal card because you get more points, but it makes it a lot harder to do the bookkeeping later on when the subscription is coming from somewhere else. So make sure you've got all of these things on a place where you can track it, you can log it, and you can say what the purpose was. So if you're getting swag to give away, it's different than if you're getting swag to sell, for example. But you might be like, I don't know how to do this. This is a lot of work. I can't judge you. I'm the same way. Part of the reason I work at Collective because I am not a bookkeeper, and which is where we help businesses. So we're going to talk briefly about S corps and how they tie into all of this. So if you're like, this sounds really great. I want to save money on my taxes by, writing or deducting some of these marketing expenses. There's even more you can do. So if you are interested in an S corp, here's kind of how it works. There are two legal structures that go into being an S corp. An S corp is a taxation strategy, not a business formation. So there's LLCs and corporations. They're two different things. So at Collective, we work with LLCs. You're formed in your state with your Secretary of State. So you have an LLC within your state. It has a unique name. It is your business entity. It is your baby, but it also is you in the business sense. It protects you. It is the entity that becomes an S corp. And it requires formal organization and process and filing paperwork. You can't just say, I'm an LLC now and say that's the case. It's not like a copyright where you can just stick it on and assume it's going to be protected. You do need paperwork. You do need to do annual compliance filings. In some states, it's more frequent. Some states, it's every 2 years. It depends. But your LLC does give you some of that protection in terms of running your business. Once you have an LLC, then you can elect to be taxed as an S corp. It's, again, not a legal structure. It's a tax election. So the way it works is you say, my LLC, Joe Schmo Enterprises, would like to be taxed as an S corp. And then the IRS decides how each of those are going to be taxed. So if you ask, I would like this, I'd like to be taxed as an S corp, it can save you money on taxes. There's a lot of things that go into it. It's a pretty big formula. But we have a team that is absolutely willing and ready to help you identify that. And Sarah will help in a couple minutes to identify if you want to chat with us. But ultimately, here's kind of what taxes look like if you are an S corp. So first, you don't pay self-employment tax on your profits. So right now, if you have a business, you get taxed on the money that comes in, regardless of if it was business or personal expenses. So this is kind of the first step. It's going to bring down that burden a little bit. Then it creates your S corp as your employer. Your LLC is your employer, and then you have an entity. So that entity is now your employer. You're an employee. It's super cool. You get to work for yourself, literally and figuratively. And then you pay yourself a reasonable compensation through payroll. So that changes depending upon what your income is, what industry it is. But usually kind of a rule of thumb is what would you pay someone else to do this work if you're paying them a salary? So if you make enough income, it might be something to start thinking about. Then those wages are subject to payroll tax, same as anybody else who has a job. Super fun. We love it. We love having our payroll taxes every paycheck, right? So it's the same thing for that. So that's going to cover the about 15% that you'd pay for those. Then you have your profits that come through and your employee wages become part of your personal income. And then you pay income tax on those. So it is a lot of steps, but ultimately it can save you money. So if you're like, I'm all about the saving money with writing off these marketing expenses, but hey, maybe this S corp thing is for me. We have lots of people that are available this afternoon and the rest of the week to talk to you. So I'm going to go ahead and put the screen up. Sarah has a poll that she will live. So if you want to talk to one of our team, feel free to say yes, no pressure. We're not going to judge you. We're not going to be upset. Like I said, I can make best friends with the side of a barn, so I can chat for forever. And that's what we want to give the information, but then let you know that this is an option that you have. While this is up and you're replying, I will go ahead and address some of the questions that we have. So the first one is, what company did you say regulates email rules? It's not a company, it's a law called CAN-SPAM. They got cutesy with the name. It is CAN-SPAM. That's the US one. There is California specific ones called CCPA. And it recently got an expansion. But if you just search California privacy law, you can look into that. So that would apply if you do business in California, which doesn't necessarily mean you're located there. You just would have income derived from that state. So if you do remote work for someone or have clients in California, you would need to consider that. And then internationally, GDPR is the one for the UK. And then Canada is CASL, CASL. They're all different, and GDPR does apply to UK citizens even if they live in another country. So that is your rundown um, in terms of all of those logistics. I saw a couple of questions about coming late. I'm glad you made it. We will be sending a recording. So you look up for that probably tomorrow. My bestie Sarah, who's here, is going to be helping me send that. And any tips for tracking important data from our emails from responses go to your account managers and not to you when you send email marketing? Ooh, that's a good question. So there's a couple options. One that I use, because that structure is very similar to what we have at Collective and when you're doing enterprise email marketing, there are tools like Litmus that will give you more granular tracking in terms of the results. If you're like looking for aggregate, I want this information. You like want to see open rates, forwards, Litmus will do that. If you're wanting specifically, did this person open the email and I want cookie-based tracking or anything that's more granular, I'd recommend something potentially more that you would see in the sales enablement domain. So like SalesLoft, Outreach, there's a couple other ones that are less expensive. Those are kind of the big guys in the space. They will have tracking codes. The other thing, if you want to bootstrap it, you could do UTM codes. You could do a lot of different ways of tracking links, but other than open rates, you can put in some code. So there's a lot of options. That would be recommended to start with some sort of tool that you can measure, like if you're sending from one centralized place, adding some tracking codes would be my rec. How do you know if you're emailing someone who is residing in a different country? This is a great question. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. One, the easiest way is look at the emails you have. Like hotmail.com is hotmail.co.uk if it started in the UK. So just search your email database for .uk. Same thing for anyone in the European Union. It's going to be .eu. Canada is .ca. So that's the easy way if you want to be like super duper sure. Normally, you're probably operating within the safe space of any of them. Um, Kind of imagine if you operate under what the US has for canned spam, and if you don't send transactional emails other than this is your booking confirmation, here's your receipt, or sending a text that way, you're probably safe because the only difference between those two is that if you're adding marketing content to that. So if you're like, I'd really like to add a blog post to my receipts and you're not sure if you have people who are European citizens, just don't do it and you're fine. It's more like I wanted to share that just in case somebody, again, not knowing where people are from on our webinar, so I wasn't giving US specific things and leaving anybody who is in Canada or other countries or is a digital nomad out on a limb. So it's not like something that's going to be Big Brother watching you and looking, did you follow all of the rules? As long as you're doing your best effort and following US guidance, you're going to be totally fine. All right, I think that's the question. So this is, again, the collective spiel in terms of what we're just talking about. This is who we work with, sole proprietors, you're an LLC or a PLLC who is filing as an S Corp. You're a single member, so some states, you can have a married one as long as you're a property or a joint property state. Again, not an expert. That's what our team is for. And then we really see the value when you make $60,000 in profits or more. So if you're a digital business that doesn't have a lot of expenses, it's gonna be closer to that 60,000 mark. If you have inventory, you have things that do cost you more, you're gonna need to be at that higher level mark to really see the value of an S Corp. That way you're minimizing your tax burden. And then the long list of things that we do at Collective, besides give you lots of great information about marketing, we'll help you set up that S Corp, we'll help you with your business and personal tax returns. We have support from licensed professionals. We have a team of account managers who are super wonderful and some of the biggest, most lovely nerds you'll ever interact with. They love taxes. Then we provide monthly bookkeeping, payroll, invoicing, quarterly tax estimates, which is the amount of predicted taxes you're going to owe each year. You pay it on a quarterly basis because when you have those income streams coming from a business, you kind of have to do a predictive model of what that'd be rather than by paycheck like you do with a normal W-2 job. Then we'll also help you figure out how much do you pay yourself. We've got a formula to help with that. And then lastly, we help with annual compliance reminders. So those are the things I mentioned earlier. If you become an LLC, that you do need to file some paperwork on a fairly regular basis. Annual for most states, some it's biannual, some it's every 6 months. And then overall, we cost $349 a month, which is about $35.60 a year. It's actually like 35, like I think 59 and change. It saves you 15% if you do join annually. And then we charge a one-time onboarding fee of $199. And that includes all the things I just listed, and bonus points is tax deductible along with all those marketing expenses. So if you didn't say earlier that you want to talk to us, you can scan this QR code right now. And because you got to spend more than 45 minutes with me, which I super appreciate, you will get a 1 month free. My friends on our growth team will let me do that. So you'll get 1 month free if you join using this. Sarah also put a QR code in the chat. There's a couple more questions that came in, so I'm going to go to answer them while we leave this up. Favorite SMS marketing platform? Ooh, it's a good question. There are so many. Really SMS platforms, the biggest cost is going to be getting your number. I kid you not, because when you get an SMS number, you have to get it approved, and it's a governmental legislation. It's called 10DLC, and you have to do a whole bunch of stuff to get it. Most tools are going to be pretty similar. What I will recommend if you're interested in SMS is get one that has tied to some AI functionality. So they just got acquired. Usually TrueLark is one that I like. I have friends that work there and help build the company. They just got acquired by Weave that does something similar. And it's designed for small businesses to be able to text and interact. There are some that if you use industry specific software, a lot of them will offer tools. If you use Salesforce as your CRM, what we use at Collective is called 360 SMS. And it's just like an add-on, works within the Salesforce platform. It's actually how I texted all of you earlier today. And I like that. It's pretty nifty, I'm not gonna lie. But most SMS platforms, what you're looking for is functionality is, can it handle people if they say stop and they don't want to get a message anymore? And can you pre-schedule? Those are the two things I would say look for. And then you're beyond that, you can have a couple more options. And then how does Collective compare to QuickBooks? So we do that same bookkeeping. We have a bookkeeping software called Collective Accounting. It's going to be very similar to what you experience with QuickBooks. We have invoicing available. Our bookkeepers will just work in that system. Has AI power tools, so it can look at the categorizations and help make recommendations of how to categorize it. And then the other things that you'd get with Collective is we have all of these transaction data from, I don't want to say the number of transactions because I don't think we've crossed the threshold yet, but more than 1 million and hundreds of millions, I feel like I can say, of transactions that we're trying to build this machine learning from, of what do small businesses spend money on and how is it categorized. So good example I can give you is Spotify. So Spotify defaults for a lot of bookkeeping tools as being like a subscription, which it is. But if you're in a small business buying Spotify, there's a really good chance that you're actually using it for ambience in your studio, your business, wherever that might be. And so that's essentially what we're trying to build, is having a small business driven bookkeeping solution. So from day to day, it's going to feel really similar. It's just going to be, it's tied in with all of your other information within our Collective dashboard. And I think we got through everything. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for staying 10 minutes extra. As extra, since you're the people who are still here, that number I texted you from does come to me. I get an email, somebody replies. So if you got additional questions that we didn't get to, feel free to shoot me a message. I am happy to answer or get you to a member of our team who can answer it. Other than that, have a splendid rest of your Wednesday and hopefully see you on a future webinar or as a Collective member.